Hey guys, tonight we slip through time and space into a world that is loud, gritty, and far less glamorous than the Hollywood movies ever showed you. You stand outside a massive stone complex, the sun barely touching the horizon, and someone is already barking orders in Latin that you don't understand. This isn't a hotel. This isn't even a hostel. It's the Ludus, the Gladiator school, and in a few steps you'll be inside its gates, realizing you may have just signed up for the most exhausting, uncomfortable day of your life. And no, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. I love seeing the mix of cities, countries, and sleepy hours scattered across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gates creak shut behind you, and the first thing you notice is the smell. Not incense, not fresh bread baking nearby. It's a mix of sweat, damp straw, and something that could be either iron from weapons, or maybe just last night's stew spilled on the ground. You're immediately herded forward by a man in a tunic whose job seems to be scowling. Your sandals scuff against the packed dirt floor. The walls are bare stone, looming high, as if they're built less to inspire you and more to make sure you don't escape. That's the first thing you learn about this place. Gladiator schools weren't just gyms, they were prisons. Historians still argue whether recruits entered by choice or by chains, but for you, it doesn't matter. The door is locked, and you're not leaving until someone higher up says so. As you shuffle past other men, you notice their stares. Some are veterans, scarred across the arms and faces, moving with that unsettling confidence of people who've fought and survived. Others are just like you, wide-eyed, trying to look tough, but clearly wondering if this was all a very bad idea. One man coughs loudly, and another stretches his shoulders, the sound of joints popping echoing through the hall. This is your welcoming committee, whether you like it or not. You're shown to a small courtyard where new arrivals stand in line. You can almost imagine the drill sergeant voiceover. Congratulations, you've been selected for Rome's most intense wellness retreat. Warning, side effects include bruising, hunger, and occasional death in front of 50,000 people. A stocky figure appears in front of you, the lanista, the trainer-owner of the school. He looks at you the way a horse trader sizes up a new mule. He checks your arms, your legs, and maybe even your teeth. No one compliments your hair. No one cares about your personal brand. You're livestock here, and you feel it. One quirky tidbit that might make you laugh, though not enough to forget your nerves, is that some schools actually gave gladiators stage names like wrestlers today. You'd think you might get something cool, like the Hammer of Rome or Steel Panther. In reality, you'd be lucky not to be stuck with shorty or wobbly knees. You're handed a bundle, a rough tunic, sandals that look like they've seen better centuries, and a wooden training sword. It's less welcome gift basket and more, congratulations, here's your burden. You hug the bundle awkwardly to your chest as you're marched deeper into the compound. Inside, the corridors feel narrow. You pass open doors where gladiators are sharpening weapons, their blades scraping against stone with rhythmic patience. In another room, you glimpse straw dummies mounted upright, stabbed over and over again until they're more patchwork than straw. The sounds all blend, clangs, grunts, laughter, and the faint trickle of water from some unseen source. It's a sensory overload, yet oddly hypnotic. Finally, you reach a door that's swung open with no ceremony. This is your cell. Not a cosy little nook, not even close. It's a square stone box with a straw mat thrown in one corner and a dented clay jug of water. The straw smells faintly of mould. The jug is lukewarm, and the only light trickles in from a slit of a window too small to crawl through. Think less bedroom makeover, and more storage closet someone forgot about since Caesar's last birthday. You place your bundle on the floor and sit down. The mat crunches beneath you, and a few bugs scatter, probably earlier tenants. You stretch out your legs and realize just how small the space really is. If you reach your arms out, you nearly touch both walls. Privacy? Forget it. Comfort? Not in this lifetime. You wonder how long you'll be here. Some gladiators trained for months before ever seeing the arena. Others were thrown in quickly, barely knowing how to hold a shield. Historians still argue whether training was meant to build true professionals, or simply wring a bit more entertainment out of doomed men. Either way, you're not exactly reassured. As night creeps in, the sounds outside your cell grow louder. Men laughing, others groaning, chains rattling. Somewhere a dog barks. You sip from your clay jug, grimace at the taste, and lie back on the straw. The ceiling is too dark to see clearly, and the walls feel like they're leaning closer. You remind yourself, this is only day 1. Training hasn't even started. Tomorrow the real pain begins. For now, you close your eyes, trying to ignore the itch of the straw and the ache already forming in your shoulders from carrying that stupid bundle. You're in the ludus now, whether you like it or not. The first rays of sunlight stab through the slit window, like a spear aimed straight at your face. You wake not because you're rested, but because the straw under your back scratches so persistently you've been rolling around half the night. Your cell is still dim, still bare, and still a little damp. You stretch, bump your elbow against the wall, and realise this room was clearly designed for storage jars, not humans. Welcome to your new Airbnb Roman edition. No refunds allowed. Your bare feet hit the cold stone floor. There's no blanket to fold, no pillow to fluff, just the mat, which smells faintly of both mildew and your own despair. The clay jug in the corner hasn't magically refilled overnight. If anything, the water tastes worse now, with a vague metallic aftertaste that suggests it's been sitting in the jug since Caesar was a toddler. You sigh because you'll need it later anyway, after sweating out what little hydration you have left. The door creaks open. A guard, tunic cinched tight, grunts something in Latin. You don't understand the words, but the gesture is clear. Move! You step into the hallway, clutching your wooden training sword like it's going to defend you from anything at all. Spoiler, it won't. As you shuffle in line with the others, you notice the similarities. Every man looks equally exhausted. Some yawn, others scratch at bug bites, a few simply stare blankly forward as if their brains checked out weeks ago. A veteran with a scar down his cheek mutters something under his breath, and everyone laughs except you because again you don't speak Latin. Congratulations, you're the awkward exchange student in ancient Rome. The corridor twists until you spill into the training yard. This is the Gladiator School's heart, a packed dirt square, surrounded by walls that make sure your only audience today is more guards and maybe a bored crow perched nearby. The sun is only just rising, but already the dust hangs in the air, stirred up by stomping feet, and yes, the smell hasn't gone anywhere. It's still sweat, straw and cabbage, only intensified by 50 men exhaling at once. You're lined up like soldiers, shoulder to shoulder. The lanista strides out, arms folded. He looks you over with the same expression someone might use when checking fruit for bruises. You stand straighter, trying not to look like the bruised peach. He paces slowly, his sandals crunching in the dirt, while behind him assistants, called doctors, carry whips. Nothing says good morning, like the reminder that any hesitation could earn you stripes across your back. This is your reality. No speeches about honour, no pep talks, just a roll call, confirming bodies are present. Historians still argue whether gladiators were treated like elite athletes or disposable pawns. From where you're standing, being counted like cattle, you're leaning toward pawn. As your name, or something vaguely resembling it, gets barked out, you raise a hand. The guard nods without looking at you. Roll call complete. The lanista waves, and suddenly the line breaks. Men scatter toward their stations, some jogging automatically as though their legs are trained to move before their brains decide. But not you. You hesitate. A sharp sting cracks the air behind you as a whip tip snaps near your feet. Message received. You hurry forward, clutching your wooden sword so tight your knuckles ache. You're funneled back toward your cell block, this time not to rest but to look around more carefully. The cell itself is still bare, but now you notice how deliberate the design is. The walls are smooth, no footholds for climbing. The window slit is just wide enough for a little air but too narrow even for your scrawnier cellmate. In fact, some gladiator schools even had underground cells, dungeons with no light at all, reserved for punishment or dangerous recruits. Compared to that, your storage closet suite feels almost deluxe. Almost. A quirky tidbit. Some wealthier gladiators, especially famous ones, were rumoured to decorate their cells with small comforts. Bronze lamps, nicer bedding, maybe even graffiti carved into the stone. Imagine a Roman influencer flexing their cell aesthetic. Sadly, you're not famous, and your aesthetic is mould chic. You run a hand along the wall, feeling the cold stone, then glance at the straw mat again. Last night it felt scratchy, but tonight, after training, it'll probably feel like the softest mattress you've ever known. It's strange how quickly your standards will drop. Out in the corridor you hear footsteps. Another gladiator shuffles by, carrying his shield, face downcast. Behind him, 2 guards laugh. The guards, after all, don't have to fight. They get to watch, to scowl, and occasionally to shove someone back into line. It's a hierarchy you'll have to get used to quickly. The guard who escorted you earlier reappears, barking again. You're herded with others into a larger room, more like a barracks than a cell. Here, men sharpen weapons, eat chunks of bread, or simply sprawl across benches. You perch at the edge, unsure if you're supposed to join them. No one offers a welcome to the team. You realise this isn't a family. It's competition. The man beside you today might be your sparring partner tomorrow, or worse, your opponent in the arena. Still, humans adapt, and you try to take comfort in small details. One man hums a tune, soft and almost calming, though the lyrics are lost on you. Another carefully braids leather strips, likely to reinforce his sandals, and someone sneezes so loudly it echoes, proving that, yes, colds existed back then too. Somehow, that makes you feel oddly connected across time. As the morning light brightens, a doctor claps his hand sharply. That's the signal. Training begins. You're shuffled out once more into the yard, heart sinking because if this is the warm-up stage, you already know your day isn't going to end with a spa treatment, and you catch yourself glancing back at your cell. Last night it seemed cruelly small. Now it looks almost inviting. Funny how quickly a scratchy straw mat can start to feel like a safe haven. The sun isn't fully up, yet you're already lined in the yard with a bunch of half-awake strangers who look like they've been dragged out of bed by force, which, to be fair, is exactly what just happened. Your eyes sting from the dust, your stomach rumbles because breakfast isn't part of this early ritual, and your body still aches from a terrible night on that scratchy mat. Welcome to roll call, gladiator style. The doctors pace up and down the row, holding whips loosely, like teachers carrying rulers they fully intend to use. Their sandals crunch in the dirt with every step. One of them mutters names from a wax tablet, calling each out like it's a bad lottery. When he gets to you, the Latin syllables stumble out mangled, and you raise a hand before he can try again. The other men snicker quietly, probably at your foreign-sounding name. Congratulations. You're comic relief before the sun is even high. This isn't a roll call meant to make you feel included. It's a check to see that no one has tried to bolt in the night. Remember those high stone walls and narrow windows. They're not decoration, they're reminders. You're not here because you want to be. You're here because Rome wants you here, and Rome doesn't really care how many of you survive long enough to reach the arena. Historians still argue whether these schools were designed to refine professional fighters or just wring a little more entertainment out of disposable bodies. Either way, when the man next to you coughs and earns a glare from the doctor, you realise the conclusion is the same: your inventory. The line shuffles forward, one man at a time inspected. Scars on arms? Good. He's survived something. Missing teeth? Fine. No one's hiring you to smile. Too skinny? Not good. You'll be force-fed barley mush until you bulk up like a human bread loaf. You're trying to look tougher than you feel, standing straighter, clenching your jaw like you've seen in movies. But the doctor barely looks at you before moving on. You're not intimidating, you're just one more body to fill the ranks. Suddenly, someone behind you sneezes loudly. Everyone flinches, half expecting a lash. Instead, the guard snorts with laughter, like it's the funniest sound he's heard all week. It's a tiny reminder that even in this bleak place, humour sneaks in, though usually at your expense. The roll call continues and your stomach growls louder. The veteran in front of you glances over his shoulder and smirks. He whispers something you don't catch, but the tone is clear. You're not going to make it through the day. You'd love to come back with a witty retort, but let's be honest. You're too hungry and too tired to be clever. One quirky detail about this ritual. Sometimes gladiator schools held roll call twice a day, morning and evening, to ensure nobody slipped away. Imagine living in a system where you're tallied like sheep every 12 hours, and while the veterans seem used to it, you can't help but feel a little insulted. You're not livestock. Then again, livestock usually gets fed first thing in the morning, You're still waiting for that part. The lanista finally arrives, striding across the yard with the self-importance of a man who knows 50 lives depend on his mood. His cloak swishes, his sandals are clean, unlike yours, already coated in dust. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. His glare sweeps the row, lingering on a few, maybe mentally betting who will last the week. You're not sure if his gaze skipping past you is good or bad. With a flick of his hand, roll call ends. The line breaks, men scattering like pigeons released from a net. Some head toward training posts, others grab shields stacked against the wall. You, of course, hesitate, which earns you a sharp shove from a guard. No instructions, no orientation packet, just move or get whipped. You shuffle toward the others, clutching your wooden sword. It's heavier than you remember, awkward to carry. The handle digs into your palm and you think longingly of your cell's clay jug. At least the jug didn't hurt to hold. Here's a scholarly debate for you to chew on while you shuffle into formation. Historians still argue whether gladiators were fed and treated like investments, since they brought money and fame, or whether they were treated purely as expendable entertainment. Looking around at the cracked sandals, the tired eyes, and the constant presence of whips, you're leaning toward the latter. And yet you'll hear whispers later that some gladiators did live surprisingly long, even comfortable lives, if they survived long enough to become crowd favourites. Right now, though, you're not crowd material. You're barely breakfast material. The sun creeps higher, warming your neck. Dust swirls underfoot as men stretch their arms and roll their shoulders. You mimic them, trying not to stand out. A doctor barks an order, and the group shuffles into formation, ready to start drills. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. You mutter to yourself, "Could have at least given us a granola bar." The man next to you raises an eyebrow, not understanding the words but clearly amused by your tone, and then the whistle, well, not a whistle, more like a bark, and everyone begins moving. You stumble into step, realizing the warm-up hasn't even begun, and already you're sweating. The morning roll call is over, but the day is only just starting. Your bare cell suddenly feels like a luxury suite you've checked out of far too early. The barked command ricochets across the yard, and suddenly every man moves at once. No warm smile, no let's ease into it. Just instant chaos disguised as structure. You're yanked into the flow like a leaf in a river. Your legs jog forward before your brain catches up. Welcome to the warm-ups. The ancient Roman version of boot camp meets sadistic gym membership. The doctor leading the charge claps his hands and points to a pile of logs stacked at the edge of the training yard. Not twigs, not kindling. Logs, some the size of small tree trunks, each looking like they'd prefer to be furniture rather than workout equipment. Men rush to grab them, hoisting them onto their shoulders like it's no big deal. You, meanwhile, eye the pile like a nervous squirrel staring at a moving truck. When it's your turn, you slide your hands under a log and nearly topple backward. The weight slams across your shoulder blades, and your knees instantly regret their life choices. You stagger, wobbling like a tourist carrying 3 pizzas through Roman traffic. The veteran next to you smirks before jogging off effortlessly, log bouncing in rhythm on his back. Show off. The command comes again, and you're off, lunging across the yard with the log clamped to your shoulder. Your sandals scrape dust with every step, and the sun, not even mid-morning yet, already beats down like it's auditioning for worst co-worker. Sweat trickles along your temples, dripping down your jaw. You haven't even swung a sword yet, and your arms burn as if you've been lifting amphorae all week. One mainstream fact: gladiator warm-ups were famously brutal. Unlike modern gyms where trainers might correct your form gently, Roman trainers corrected you with whips. You bent wrong on a lunge. Snap. You dropped the log. Snap. You slowed down. You guessed it. Snap. Fitness apps today might count your steps. Here, the whip counts your mistakes. You lunge forward, legs trembling, trying not to collapse. Dust puffs around your feet, coating your sandals in brown grime. Your log feels heavier with each movement, pressing down like it's personally offended to be lifted. You mutter, "Definitely skipping leg day after this," though no one understands your words. The man behind you does chuckle, though, probably because you look ridiculous. The warm-up doesn't end with lunges. Oh no, logs are swapped out for stone weights, awkward lumps carved roughly into blocks. You're told to squat, and keep squatting. The stones dig into your palms, edges sharp enough to leave dents. Your thighs burn, your back aches, and you realise you're basically auditioning to be a forklift in human form. Somewhere in your mind, a tiny voice whispers, "You're paying in sweat for bread and beans later." Not exactly a motivating mantra. Historians still argue whether these early drills were designed to build real strength or simply to break spirits. After all, gladiators weren't just entertainers. They were living propaganda, proof of Rome's dominance. Training them harshly meant proving Rome's power, even over its own fighters. You can't decide whether you're being moulded into a warrior or just crushed into compliance. Either way, your calves are screaming louder than the man who tripped and dropped his log. Speaking of, that poor soul earns the day's first punishment. Extra laps around the yard while carrying 2 logs. Everyone else groans sympathetically, but also secretly thanks the gods it wasn't them. You learn fast. Survival here isn't just about swinging swords. It's about not being the unlucky one caught fumbling. By now your tunic sticks to your skin soaked with sweat. Dust clings to the fabric, turning it into a scratchy second hide. You glance at the other men, faces red, mouths open, gasping like fish tossed onto a dock. No one looks heroic. No one looks like the movie posters. You all look like laundry left out in the sun too long. There's one quirky tidbit that would make you laugh if you weren't so exhausted. Ancient Romans believed that barley, not protein shakes, was the ultimate muscle fuel. Gladiators were sometimes nicknamed horderii, or barley men, because their diet was so heavy on the grain. You imagine a modern fitness influencer holding up a bowl of mushy barley with the caption, "Get shredded the gladiator way." Spoiler, it doesn't taste like a smoothie. The drills drag on. Push-ups on the packed dirt, sit-ups with logs pressed to your chest, and more squats than you thought existed in human history. Your muscles scream for mercy. Your lungs wheeze. At one point you swear you see the crow on the wall tilt its head, watching you flop like it's judging your form. And yet, despite the misery, something strange happens. After the 50th push-up, or maybe the 100th, you stop fighting each movement and just surrender. Your body moves, shaky but automatic, like a puppet on invisible strings. You're too tired to think, too busy trying not to collapse. Somehow, the rhythm dulls your panic. You're still sweating buckets, but the panic in your chest softens to a dull hum. The whistle, or bark, finally sounds. The drills stop. Men collapse to the dirt, some lying flat, others clutching knees. You sink down too, chest heaving, log rolling off your shoulder with a thud that shakes dust into the air. For a brief, delirious moment, you consider hugging the dirt like it's the most comfortable mattress you've ever known. The doctor surveys the group with arms folded, clearly unimpressed. He mutters something to the lanista, who nods once. Then, without ceremony, another order is barked and men stumble to their feet. Warm-up is over, which only means one thing: the real training is about to begin. You drag yourself upright, legs quivering, arms trembling, lungs wheezing. You thought the cell was bad. You thought roll call was bad. But now, as you squint at the next pile of training gear, wooden swords stacked like cruel invitations, you realise the warm-ups were just the opening act. The headliner is about to hit the stage. You're herded toward a rack of weapons, if you can call them that. At first glance, you think you've lucked out. Wooden swords, no sharp edges, no bloody business today. Then you pick one up, and you instantly regret being alive. The Rudies, that's what it's called, isn't some light toy you'd find in a kid's dress-up box. It's a heavy slab of hardwood, deliberately weighted to feel worse than the real thing. The Romans figured if you could swing this beast around, an iron blade in the arena would feel almost graceful. Unfortunately for you, right now it feels like you're lifting a log attached to a stick. You stagger under the weight, arms trembling after the morning's log-lugging fiasco. The veteran next to you swings his Rudies casually, slicing the air like he's conducting an orchestra. You, on the other hand, wobble so much you almost smack yourself in the shin. He smirks again, because clearly your humiliation is his new cardio. The doctor barks, and the drills begin. You're told to strike, over and over again, against the empty air. Forward slash, backhand, thrust, repeat. Each swing sends shocks up your arms. Your shoulders ignite like they're on fire, and your palms sting as the rough wood rubs them raw. Within minutes, blisters are already forming. Great. Battle scars. but not the cool kind. One mainstream historical fact: gladiators spent more time training with these wooden swords than with actual steel. Safety was part of it. You don't want your trainees stabbing each other before ticket sales roll in. But it was also about conditioning. A real sword might weigh 3 pounds. A rudis could feel like double that. So if you could last hours with the rudis, the arena blade felt like holding a feather. That's the theory anyway. Right now, the feather analogy feels like a cruel joke. The drills continue: strike, recover, strike, recover. Dust swirls with every step as sandals shuffle in unison. The yard echoes with the dull thwack of wood meeting straw dummies. You're paired with a dummy that has clearly seen better days. It's lopsided, patched up with rope, and leaning like it wants to retire. You thrust your rudis forward, hitting it square in the chest. The impact rattles your teeth. The dummy wobbles but doesn't fall. You, however, nearly do. A doctor strides past, frowning at your form. He adjusts your stance, shoving your legs wider apart and yanking your shoulders back. It hurts, but you don't argue. You're learning fast. Complaining doesn't get you sympathy, it gets you whips. To your left, 2 men spar with their rudi, wooden blades clacking loudly. One overcommits, trips, and face plants in the dirt. The yard erupts in laughter, even from the doctors. You breathe a sigh of relief. At least you're not today's punchline. Yet. Here's a quirky tidbit. Later in life, retired gladiators who were freed were sometimes presented with a rudis as a symbol of their release. Imagine it. The same wooden sword that tortured you during training becoming the prize you hold up in victory. Right now, the idea of keeping this thing as a souvenir feels like being gifted a lifetime supply of dental drills. Your arms shake as the drills continue. Forward slash, backhand, thrust. Sweat pours into your eyes, blurring your vision. You blink hard, the salt sting making you wince. Your tunic clings, soaked through, dust turning it gritty against your skin. Every swing feels heavier than the last. Your breathing grows ragged, chest heaving like a bellows. And yet, you can't stop. You're not allowed to. Every time your blade droops, a sharp voice cuts through the yard. Every time your strike loses energy, the doctor yells something that sounds like a curse. You keep moving because stopping isn't an option. Historians still argue whether gladiators were drilled to perfection like soldiers, or simply forced into endless repetition to wear them down. Looking around at the hunched backs and blistered palms, you're convinced it's both. This isn't training for skill, it's training for obedience. Your partner dummy stares back at you with its straw-stuffed chest and rope-tied limbs. You jab again, weaker this time, and imagine it smirking. In your haze of exhaustion, you're pretty sure the dummy is winning on points. Another order cracks across the yard and suddenly the routine changes. Now it's footwork, sidesteps, lunges, pivot, repeat. You stumble, nearly dropping your rudis but catch it at the last second. A guard's whip cracks nearby, a reminder that fumbling is dangerous. The rhythm is relentless. Step, swing, recover. Step, swing, recover. You feel like you've been stuck in an eternal cardio class run by demons. At some point, you lose track of time. You hear one of the veterans chuckle. He's swinging easily, sweat shining across his arms, breathing steady. He catches your eye and shrugs as if to say, "You'll get used to it." You want to believe him, but your arms are so numb you're not sure they'll ever recover. Finally, mercifully, the bark comes again. Stop. You let the rudis fall to your side, arm dangling like a dead weight. The dummy slumps too, as if it's relieved the abuse is over. Men collapse onto benches or sit on the ground, gulping from clay jugs. You stagger back, chest heaving, arms trembling, palms raw. And here's the kicker. This was only the first weapon drill of the day. You're still hours away from lunch. And somehow, your cell's scratchy mat is already calling your name. Like the world's most unappealing yet oddly comforting bed. No rest. No mercy. As soon as you've caught half a breath from swinging that cursed wooden sword, the bark comes again. A doctor points to another rack, this one stacked with shields so large they look like doors stolen from an ancient house. You trudge forward with the others, dreading what comes next. The shield you're handed is taller than your torso and almost as wide. It's wooden, rimmed in metal, and heavier than it has any right to be. You grip the handle, the wood rough under your blistered palms, and nearly topple sideways. Balancing it feels less like wielding a weapon and more like trying to carry a dining table upright. The veteran next to you swings his into position with practiced ease, hiding his whole body behind it like he's vanishing into a fortress. You, on the other hand, wobble so badly that you almost clip the guy on your other side. The drills begin. First stance. Feet planted wide, knees bent, shield raised high. Your arms shake immediately. The shield feels like it's swallowing you whole, pressing your shoulder backward. Your trainer yells something and slams his own shield into yours. The impact rattles your teeth and drives you a step back. Wrong answer. He glares. You force yourself forward again, legs quivering like jelly, until you're back in line. Mainstream fact: Roman gladiators didn't all use the same gear. Their equipment depended on the class of fighter they were assigned: Murmillo, Secutor, Retiarius. But no matter the role, shields were critical, not just for defense but for stamina training. Holding one for hours built endurance the same way modern athletes train with weighted vests. Only, of course, your vest is roughly the size of a barn door. The commands keep coming. Advance 2 steps. Slam the shield down. Retreat. Pivot. Raise it overhead. Each motion digs deeper into your shoulders. Your arms ache. Your knees burn, and sweat drips freely down your spine. You try to mimic the veterans, but your movements are jerky, clumsy. When you lower the shield too quickly, a whip cracks in the dust at your feet. Message received. Keep it up, or you'll be doing laps with this thing until you collapse. To your left, one man falters and actually drops his shield. The thud echoes across the yard. Everyone freezes for a heartbeat, waiting. Sure enough, a doctor storms over, barking in Latin. The poor man is ordered to pick up his shield, then hoist a second one onto his back. Double the weight, double the misery. He staggers away, forced into laps while the rest of you shuffle forward. You mutter under your breath. Guess that's what they call 2-for-1 training. The guy next to you doesn't get the words, but he still snorts, probably catching your tone. Here's a quirky tidbit for you. Some shields were decorated with bold, colourful designs. Snakes, lightning bolts, suns. They weren't just for flair. They were meant to intimidate opponents and dazzle crowds. Yours, unfortunately, has no decoration. It's just battered wood with a dent so deep you could use it as a soup bowl. So much for looking intimidating. The drills drag on. Raise, slam, pivot. The rhythm becomes hypnotic, almost like a cruel dance. Your legs ache from constant bending, your arms from constant lifting. The shield grows heavier with every heartbeat, until you're convinced it's doubling in weight just to spite you. The crow on the wall is back, cocking its head as if judging your form again. You resist the urge to hurl the shield at it. You'd miss anyway. Historians still argue whether training with oversized shields was primarily for muscle building or for mental conditioning. Some claim it was to push gladiators beyond their physical limits, others that it prepared them for battlefield tactics borrowed from Roman legions. Either way, your shoulders are screaming louder than the debate. At one point you nearly stumble forward, your knee buckling. You catch yourself just in time, slamming the shield down to steady your balance. A trainer nearby raises his whip but lowers it again. Close call. Your heart pounds as if you've just dodged a real blade. And honestly, that whip looks scarier than most blades. The sun is climbing now, baking the yard. The shield feels hotter every minute, the wood pressing warmth against your arm like a campfire you didn't ask for. Your tunic is plastered to your back, soaked with sweat. Every inhale pulls dust into your throat. You cough, earning a glare, but at least no punishment. Not this time. Another order rings out, and the drill shifts to group formations. You're shoved into a block of men, shields overlapping in a crude wall. Together you march forward, step by grinding step, until the doctor shoves against the line with his own shield. The impact reverberates through the group, and you nearly topple backward. The men on either side grunt, leaning into you to keep the formation steady. For a brief, fleeting second, you feel it. The strange unity of fighting shoulder to shoulder. Then your arms buckle again, and the moment passes. When the signal finally comes to stop, you let the shield drop a few inches, chest heaving, arms quivering. You swear the weight has permanently dented your shoulder. Around you, men slump against their shields or drop to the ground, gasping for air. The punished man with double shields finally stumbles back into the yard, drenched in sweat, face pale. You glance back at your battered, dented shield and shake your head. It's only mid-morning, and you're already ready to crawl back into your scratchy straw bed. But no one's done yet. Not by a long shot. Wooden swords were bad, shields are worse, and something tells you the next drill isn't going to involve nap time and lemonade. The break between drills barely lasts long enough for you to wipe sweat from your forehead with the corner of your tunic. Before your arms even stop trembling from shield work, a barked order splits the air. This time, it's sparring, which means instead of whacking straw dummies or holding up oversized furniture, you'll be facing another human being, someone who might actually enjoy hitting you. You're paired off quickly. Fate, in its infinite cruelty, places you opposite a man built like two oxen stacked together. His arms are tree trunks, his neck barely exists, and when he grins at you, it looks less like friendliness and more like a wolf discovering a new chew toy. You grip your wooden sword tighter, trying to ignore the growing pit in your stomach. The command is given, and the man lunges. Your brain yelps, "Too fast!" You stumble back, raising your shield just in time. The impact rattles your bones, the sound echoing across the yard like a door slamming shut. Your arms quiver from the shock. He doesn't pause, though. Another strike, harder this time, pushes you 2 steps back. You're pretty sure he's enjoying himself. Mainstream fact. Gladiators often sparred against one another daily, not just to build technique, but to learn resilience. Trainers believed the only way to prepare for real combat was to simulate it, minus the actual killing, of course. Still, bruises, sprains, and even broken bones were part of the deal. In other words, practice makes permanent injuries. You try a counter-strike, swinging your wooden sword in a clumsy arc. The Oxman blocks effortlessly and shoves you sideways. Dust sprays up as your sandals scrape the ground. The doctor watching you shout something sharp, probably along the lines of "Don't embarrass me." Your opponent lunges again, and you brace yourself, shield trembling in front of you. Every impact rattles your arms, each block making your palms sting worse. Within minutes, you've forgotten about the blisters from earlier. They've been upgraded to full-on throbbing wounds. Your tunic is damp, your chest heaving. Meanwhile, your opponent barely seems winded, swinging like he's swatting flies. You wonder if there's a trick to this. Some breathing pattern, some rhythm. The man beside you earlier is grinning now, clearly testing your limits. Then, in a rare stroke of clumsy luck, you stumble forward unexpectedly just as he swings. Your shield collides with his chest. He grunts, staggers a step, then steadies himself. For a second, you're stunned. You actually landed something. The doctor barks approval, and the veterans around you chuckle. Your opponent doesn't look mad. In fact, he laughs. A booming laugh that rattles your ears. Maybe he respects your lucky blunder, or maybe he's just warming up for round 2. Here's a quirky tidbit. Gladiators sometimes developed genuine friendships with sparring partners. There are accounts of men training together so long that when one was forced to fight the other in the arena, they refused, and instead turned their weapons on the audience or their trainers. Historians still argue whether those stories are exaggerated, but the idea that camaraderie could survive in such a brutal environment is oddly comforting. Right now, though, you doubt Mr. Ox over here is planning a friendship bracelet exchange. The sparring continues, dust turning the air hazy. You're panting hard, your arms weak, your grip slipping. The doctor shouts again, snapping his whip in the dirt. You jolt, raise your shield just in time to block another crushing blow. Sparks of pain shoot up your shoulder. You groan, but you're still upright. Barely. And then it ends. The order comes, sharp and final. Everyone lowers their weapons, stepping back. You're drenched in sweat. Your arms shaking uncontrollably. Your chest aching with every breath. Your opponent grins again, pats your shoulder hard enough to nearly knock you over, and mutters something in a Latin that you don't understand. From his tone, though, it might actually be a compliment. Or maybe just, "Good luck surviving lunch." You collapse to the ground, gulping air. Around you, other pairs stagger, some nursing bruises, others laughing. A few unlucky ones clutch ribs or limp, already sporting swollen ankles. No one here escapes unscathed. That's the point. Historians still argue whether these sparring matches were carefully supervised to avoid real injuries, or if trainers simply shrugged when someone broke a bone. Judging by the way the doctor ignores the limping man nearby, you suspect it's the latter. Injuries aren't tragedies here. They're Tuesday. As you sit there, arms limp, you realise something chilling. This was only practice. And still, It nearly broke you. The real thing, the roaring crowd, the sharp blades, the sand-stained darker, would be worse. Much worse. You lie back in the dust, shield propped uselessly beside you, eyes squinting against the blinding sun. The crow perches nearby again, tilting its head like it's mocking you. You mutter, "You fight him next time," pointing weakly at your ox-sized opponent. The bird just caws, which you interpret as laughter. The bark that ends sparring doesn't bring rest. It just herds you and the others toward the mess hall. At this point, though, even moving toward food feels like salvation. Your body aches, your arms throb, your stomach gnaws at itself like a starving animal. The promise of a meal, no matter how bland, is enough to keep your legs shuffling forward. The mess hall is nothing glamorous. 4 stone walls, long wooden benches, a few oil lamps, and the smell. Oh, the smell. It's equal parts boiled beans, smoke, and too many sweaty bodies crammed together. You're waved to a bench, squeezed between 2 men who both reek of dust and exertion. Not that you're any better. You probably smell like you wrestled a donkey and lost. Clay bowls are slammed down in front of you. Inside is barley mush, thick, beige, and about as exciting as chewing on wallpaper paste. Alongside it, a small scoop of beans, maybe a scrap of dried fruit if you're lucky. No fancy sauces, no delicate spices, no olive oil drizzle to impress Instagram. Just fuel. Mainstream fact: gladiators were nicknamed hordearii, barley men. Their diet was deliberately heavy on grains and beans, designed to bulk them up with muscle and fat. That fat layer wasn't just for show. It actually helped protect them from shallow cuts in the arena, which bled dramatically for the crowd but weren't immediately fatal. Yes, in Rome, your love handles could be life-saving. You scoop a mouthful of the mush and force it down. It tastes bland, earthy, with a faint grit like sand between your teeth. You cough, then take another spoonful because hunger doesn't care about flavour. To your left, a veteran shovels it in with the enthusiasm of someone who knows it's better than starving. To your right, a younger recruit stares at his bowl with horror, clearly wondering if he can survive on water alone. Spoiler, he can't. A guard walks the aisle with a whip coiled in his hand. No one dares leave food uneaten. Wasting rations earns punishment, so everyone eats, even if they grimace. You sigh, scoop another spoonful, and tell yourself it's just ancient oatmeal with fewer redeeming qualities. Here's a quirky tidbit to distract you. Some evidence suggests gladiators occasionally drank a tonic made of charred bone ash mixed with vinegar. Supposedly, it replenished minerals after grueling training. Imagine finishing your bland barley lunch with a nice tall glass of burnt skeleton juice. Talk about a post-workout shake no one asked for. As the bowls empty, chatter rises. The veterans swap jokes, laughing with mouths still full. One man taps rhythm on the table with his spoon, humming some tune that sounds halfway between a march and a drinking song. Another launches into a story. Judging by the hand gestures, it's either about a fight or a goat. You can't follow the words, but the mood is lighter here than in the yard. Even misery gets a lunch break. Historians still argue how strict the meal routines were. Some think gladiators had carefully measured rations, optimized like ancient athletes. Others suggest it was more about keeping costs low, feeding dozens of men cheaply. Looking at your bowl, you're leaning toward cheap. Yet, oddly enough, your body already feels a spark of relief with each mouthful. Calories are calories, and you need them. By the time you scrape the last smear of mush from your bowl, your stomach aches less. You even find yourself sighing, leaning back slightly on the bench. Not satisfaction exactly, more like resignation. At least hunger won't gnaw at you during the next round of torture. The guard claps his hands, signalling the end of the meal. Bowls are collected, benches scrape against the floor as everyone stands. You groan as your legs protest, still sore from drills. Some men stretch, others burp loudly without shame. One even farts so dramatically that the table rattles, drawing laughter from half the hall. You can't help but chuckle too, because sometimes humour is the only seasoning this diet gets. As you're herded back toward the yard, you glance at the veterans. They look steadier now, bellies full, posture firm. You, however, feel like you've been stuffed with glue. The barley sits heavy, threatening to glue your insides together. And yet, compared to training on an empty stomach, it's better. Slightly. The sun outside is blinding after the dim hall. Heat rises from the packed dirt yard like waves. You squint, shielding your eyes with one hand. The crow is still perched on the wall, staring, probably hoping you'll collapse soon so it can peck at leftovers. You mutter, "Don't get your hopes up." Lunch is over, energy restored, or at least patched together. And just as you allow yourself a tiny flicker of hope that maybe the afternoon won't be so brutal, the doctor claps his hands sharply. The sound is like a judge's gavel. Breaks over, back to suffering. You sigh, adjust your tunic, and pick up your wooden sword again. The barley mush is already weighing you down, but you'll need every ounce of it. Because if the morning nearly broke you, the afternoon is about to prove why nobody would last a day in this place. The brief reprieve of lunch vanishes as quickly as it came. You're shoved back into the yard, the midday sun blazing overhead, the air heavy and thick like a wool blanket thrown over your head. The barley mush sloshes uneasily in your stomach as you line up again, shield in one hand, sword in the other. If you thought the morning was rough, the afternoon is here to laugh in your face. The order comes, run. No explanation, no warm-up stretch, no hydrate first, just run. Dozens of you take off across the packed dirt, sandals slapping in the uneven rhythm. The dust rises in choking clouds, filling your nose and throat until every breath tastes like gravel. Your arms swing limply, already worn to rags, and each step feels like hauling a sack of bricks. The trainers stand off to the side, whips dangling, watching. They shout whenever someone slows. One unlucky man coughs too hard, stumbles, and instantly gets yanked out to carry a heavy stone block while jogging. You silently pray your lungs behave, though they already feel like bellows wheezing through holes. Mainstream fact. Gladiator schools often emphasized endurance as much as technique. Running laps, hauling weights, and long drills were staples. The idea was simple. A fighter who could outlast an opponent often survived. In the arena, stamina wasn't just fitness, it was survival currency. You, unfortunately, are bankrupt. You push forward, legs screaming, barley mush threatening mutiny in your gut. Sweat pours down your back, plastering your tunic against your skin. The sun beats on your neck like it's part of the training staff trying to whip you into submission. You glance sideways and see the veteran still steady, still jogging like he's taking a casual morning stroll. You want to trip him out of spite but don't have the energy. After what feels like hours but is probably 15 minutes, the command shifts. Now it's not just running, it's obstacle drills. Logs to leap over, sandbags to weave through, and ladders of rope strung along the ground to test your footwork. You stumble through each one, clumsy as a drunk centurion. When you trip and nearly faceplant, a trainer's whip cracks so close to your sandal that you feel the sting of dust flick up against your ankle. Here's a quirky tidbit to distract you from your suffering. Some Roman sources suggest gladiators occasionally trained with animals. Yes, animals. Chasing them, dodging them, or even running alongside them to build agility. Imagine sprinting after a goat while your trainer screams encouragement. Today, though, the only animals are the crows circling lazily overhead, waiting for someone to keel over. You press on, lungs burning, vision swimming. Every inhale feels shallow, every exhale ragged. Around you, others gasp and stumble. Some mutter curses under their breath, others grit their teeth in silence. The rhythm of feet pounding dirt becomes hypnotic, almost musical. But it's the kind of music that makes you want to collapse in the middle of the song. Historians still argue whether gladiators trained harder than Roman soldiers, or simply differently. Some accounts suggest the regimens were nearly identical. Endurance, discipline, obedience. Others claim gladiator schools were harsher, designed not to create soldiers, but to grind men into entertainment machines. Judging by the sweat dripping off your nose and the dizziness creeping into your skull, you'd cast your vote for harsher. Eventually, mercifully, the order comes to stop. You collapse to your knees, gulping air, chest heaving like you've been underwater for hours. The dirt clings to your skin, coating your arms and legs until you look like you've been rolled in flour. Around you, men sprawl on the ground, some clutching their sides, others lying flat with arms spread wide. A few are still forced to keep jogging with stones, their faces pale but determined. Your stomach twists uncomfortably, the barley lunch sloshing in protest. You gag once, then swallow hard. Vomiting in front of the trainers is not an option unless you want to do push-ups in it. The whistle, or bark, sounds again. You groan, dragging yourself upright. Endurance drills aren't over. Now comes the carrying portion. Large sacks filled with sand are thrust into your arms. You stagger under the weight, hugging the sack to your chest like a reluctant toddler. The command: walk the perimeter of the yard until told otherwise. You shuffle forward, every step agony. The sack scratches against your tunic, digging into your ribs. Your arms tremble, your shoulders scream, and your legs threaten to buckle. The veterans march steadily, eyes forward, unfazed. You glance at them in disbelief, wondering if their bodies are made of marble. Yours apparently is made of soggy barley mush. Minutes stretch endlessly. The sack feels heavier with each lap, the sun hotter, the dust thicker. Your throat is dry, your tongue like leather. When a guard finally calls a halt, you nearly drop the sack on your own foot. It thuds into the dirt, raising a puff of dust. You stagger back, wiping sweat from your eyes, gasping for air. The afternoon endurance session has chewed you up and spat you out. And the worst part? It's not even close to over. You glance toward the weapons rack and spot spears, tridents, and nets waiting their turn. You sigh, muttering, "Should have just been a fisherman." The crow caws in agreement. You're barely upright, still wiping dust from your eyes, when the trainers point to another rack of weapons. No more logs, no more endless laps. Now it's time for variety. Spears, tridents, nets, daggers, all lined up like a buffet you didn't ask for. The veterans stride toward the rack eagerly, like kids at a candy shop. You drag your feet, muttering, "I'd rather have actual candy." A spear is shoved into your hand first. Long wooden shaft, iron tip dulled but still intimidating. It feels awkward, heavy toward the end, like holding a broom with an attitude problem. You grip it, trying to look competent. The doctor barks and the drills begin. Thrust forward, pull back, thrust again. You lunge clumsily, nearly losing your balance on the first attempt. The veteran beside you moves fluidly, his spear darting like a snake. You, meanwhile, resemble someone poking an invisible wasp nest with a stick. Mainstream fact: Roman gladiators weren't limited to one weapon type. Many were trained in multiple forms to adapt to different arena matchups. Spears and tridents weren't just for show. They gave reach, allowing fighters to keep distance from sword-wielding opponents. And nets, odd as they sound, were designed to trip and entangle enemies before delivering the finishing blow. Variety wasn't a luxury here, it was survival insurance. The spear drills continue until your shoulders ache, then you'll switch to a trident. 3 prongs, wide and heavy. The thing feels more like an anchor than a weapon. You stagger under its weight, nearly impaling your own foot when you lower it too quickly. The doctor scowls, mutters something sharp, and you hoist it again with trembling arms. You thrust forward, prongs catching the sunlight, then pull back, panting. The veterans make it look effortless. You just look like you're auditioning for a clumsy fisherman role. And then comes the net. A weighted mesh of rope, coarse and scratchy, smelling faintly of mildew. You stare at it in disbelief. Really? A net? The doctor demonstrates. Toss it wide, let the weight spread, then yank to entangle your opponent. Easy enough when you're standing still. Much harder when you're exhausted, half blind from sweat, and holding what feels like laundry day gone wrong. You toss your net forward. It collapses in a sad heap 2 feet in front of you. The veterans laugh openly. You sigh, shuffle forward and try again. This time it flies slightly farther but immediately tangles around your sandal. You stumble, nearly faceplant, while a trainer cracks his whip in irritation. The message is clear: stop embarrassing yourself. Here's a quirky tidbit. The retiarius, or netman, was often considered one of the lowest ranked gladiator types. He wore little armour, relied on agility, and fought with the net and trident combo. Audiences sometimes mock them as cowardly compared to heavily armoured fighters. Still, a skilled retiarius could bring down even the most formidable opponent by tangling them first. In other words, nets weren't glamorous, but they worked. Unless you're the one holding it right now. You toss again, finally managing to spread it properly, though the effort leaves you gasping. The weights thud into the dirt and you yank it back, rope scraping across your blistered palms. You mutter, "Should have just been an actual fisherman." The crow, still perched nearby, caws like it agrees. Historians still argue whether gladiators specialised in one weapon or rotated through many. Some suggest schools trained men broadly before assigning a class. Others claim specialisation was immediate, shaping you into a defined role. Judging by how miserable you are at all three, you suspect your career here would be very short, regardless of specialisation. The drills cycle endlessly. Spear thrusts, trident strikes, net tosses. Your arms grow heavier with each repetition until even lifting the weapons feels impossible. Sweat stings your eyes, your legs shake and your palms burn raw. Backstage notes from the period reveal a quirky, almost comical side of this illusion. Actors complained about the wig's weight and the way the oil attracted dust, smoke and even insects under the heat of stage lamps. Imagine delivering a tragic monologue while a moth flutters stubbornly in your knot, or feeling sweat trickle under the heavy wig as you try to maintain an expression of stoic dignity. Yet audiences never saw the discomfort. They saw only the gleam, the symmetry, the confidence of hair that looked indistinguishable from a warrior's pride. As the play unfolds, you notice how the knot itself becomes a character. A proud warrior struts on stage, his knot perfectly stiff and upright, declaring his strength and honour before he even speaks a line. Another actor enters, a sly villain, and the crowd chuckles knowingly as he gestures toward his rival's knot, threatening it with mock scissors. Laughter ripples through the audience. In real life, such a gesture could spark a duel, blood spilling over insult. But here, under painted backdrops and the cover of fiction, it becomes comedy, safe and exaggerated. The forbidden snip transforms into entertainment. Then the drama turns serious. An old warrior, weary from years of service, kneels under a dim lantern and cuts his own knot in ritual retirement. The audience holds its breath. Women dab their eyes. Men nod solemnly. The cut is not disgrace here. It is poetry, a performance of dignity. Even children sense the weight of it, watching the strands fall onto the stage floor. The knot carries power no matter the context, but on stage it becomes mythic, condensed into a moment of pure theatre. Outside of Kabuki, townsfolk carried these images with them. Commoners, merchants, even farmers, none of whom could wear real knots, found themselves mimicking stage gestures in playful parody. Children tied cords around their heads, pretending to be warriors. Women giggled as their husbands teased each other by tugging at imaginary knots. Kabuki had smuggled samurai culture into every household, not by breaking the law, but by performing it in a way that blurred lines between imitation and reality. Ukiyo-e artists captured the craze. Prints of famous kabuki actors with towering knots were sold in stalls for pennies, hung in homes like celebrity posters today. Audiences followed their favourite performers not only for their acting, but for how magnificently their wigs imitated or exaggerated the samurai look. The knot became both fashion and fandom, replicated endlessly in woodblock ink. And yet, there was unease. Some samurai frowned at this appropriation of their symbol. Wasn't the knot sacred, reserved for warriors alone? To see common actors and townsfolk laughing over it seemed dangerously close to mockery. But the theatre was too beloved, too entrenched. Even samurai, slipping incognito into crowded seats, found themselves enthralled, laughing at the jokes, wiping tears at the retirements, unable to deny the knot's theatrical magic. You picture one such evening in vivid detail. The audience leans forward, breath held. The hero's knot is threatened on stage, scissors poised dramatically. The villain lunges, the hero dodges, the crowd gasps, some shouting warnings aloud as though their cries might alter the outcome. Children squeal, women clutch sleeves, men mutter oaths. It's only theatre, but in that moment the knot is alive again, not as etiquette but as living story. When the curtain finally falls, the spell dissolves. Actors retreat backstage, wigs lifted from their heads, sweat dampening their hairlines. They return to ordinary lives, shopkeepers, townsmen, fathers, friends. But for a few hours they wore the knot as convincingly as any warrior, carrying the burden of honour and spectacle together. You step back into the cool night, lanterns swaying above, the crowd chattering excitedly about the play. For a moment you feel as though everyone leaving the theatre carries an invisible knot atop their heads, bound together by the shared dream of warrior pride. The knot, so fiercely guarded in daily life, has been lent out by the stage, transformed into public myth. And as you wander away, you realise Kabuki had done something no battlefield or barber could. It made the knot belong to everyone, if only for an evening. Pride, parody and longing, all rolled into wigs under painted lights, reminding you that symbols never stay locked in one place. On stage, they travel freely, catching every heart willing to watch. You follow the flow of the crowd leaving the theatre until the noise fades into quieter streets, and suddenly the world feels wider. It isn't just Japanese eyes on these knots anymore. You catch sight of men in unfamiliar clothes, loose trousers, wide hats, strange coats smelling faintly of sea voyages. You glance back at the straw man one last time, its stitched face sagging. Somehow you can't shake the feeling it won the round. If you thought dummies were cruel but harmless, the trainers now remind you that this place thrives on punishment. The whistle blasts again, sharp enough to make you flinch, and men scramble into formation. You're slower, and of course, the doctor notices. A whip cracks across the dirt near your toes, the message clear. Move faster, or your skin will be next. Punishments here aren't just about correcting mistakes, they're about control. Drop your sword? Punishment. Stumble in formation? Punishment. Forget to raise your shield on command? Definitely punishment. The yard becomes a theatre of misery, each blunder earning creative consequences. One man near you slips while shifting his shield, letting it hit the ground with a hollow thunk. The yard goes silent for a moment. Then the trainer's voice booms, calling him forward. The man grimaces, shoulders sagging as a heavy stone is dragged out and dropped into his arms. The command, run laps with it until told otherwise. You watch him stagger off, face twisted with effort, sweat already pouring down his back. Mainstream fact, Gladiator schools were notorious for discipline bordering on cruelty. Trainers knew that fear was as powerful as drills in shaping obedience. If exhaustion didn't keep you in line, the sting of the whip or the weight of a punishment task would. A gladiator who disobeyed wasn't just risking pain, he was risking death in the arena, where mistakes were fatal. You grip your sword tighter, determined not to drop it. But the universe, as usual, has a sense of humour. Your shield slips from sweaty fingers during a pivot, slamming into the dirt. The sound echoes like a drum announcing your failure. Every head turns. The doctor fixes his eyes on you. You swallow hard. He strides over, whip coiled loosely in his hand. You brace for pain, but instead he points to the stone pile. Relief flickers for half a second, until you realise you'll be the next to run laps with what looks like a boulder disguised as a training tool. You hoist it into your arms, the rough surface scraping your tunic, and nearly buckle under its weight. Your back arches, your arms tremble, and the command comes, run. You stagger forward, stone crushing your chest, lungs already burning, dust billows with every step, coating your lips and tongue. Around the yard, laughter rises, veterans amused at your misery. You mutter between gasps, glad I could entertain you. The crow on the wall caws again, as if it's joining in the chorus. Here's a quirky tidbit. Punishment wasn't always physical. Sometimes gladiators were forced to stand motionless for hours, holding shields aloft until their arms gave out. Others were made to endure verbal humiliation, mocked by trainers in front of their peers. Compared to that, hauling this rock almost feels merciful, except your spine disagrees. You stumble after 3 laps, knees buckling. The stone nearly crushes your foot as it slips, but you catch it just in time. The doctor shouts, whip snapping in the air. You grit your teeth and push on, every muscle screaming. The world narrows to the weight in your arms, the pounding of your heart, and the endless circle of dirt under your feet. Historians still argue whether these punishments truly built stronger fighters or simply weeded out the weak. Was it tough love, forging resilience, or sadism dressed up as discipline? Judging by the way your arms feel like they're about to detach, you lean toward sadism. Finally, after what feels like hours but is probably only minutes, you're barked back into line. You drop the stone with a grunt, dust puffing up in a cloud that makes you cough violently. Your arms hang limp, your chest heaves, your legs wobble like jelly. The men nearby smirk, some with sympathy, others with amusement. You just glare at the ground, praying for a miracle, or at least a water break. Punishments ripple across the yard as training continues. A man forced to crawl on hands and knees with his shield strapped to his back. Another made to hold his rudis overhead until his arms tremble uncontrollably. Every mistake has a price, and today, everyone pays. You slump onto the dirt when given the chance, sucking in shallow breaths, sweat dripping down your chin. Your arms ache, your back throbs, your pride is in tatters. And the worst part? This isn't even unusual. This is just Tuesday in the Ludus. By the time you stagger toward the baths, your body feels like it's been dismantled and reassembled with cheap spare parts. Every muscle twitches, every joint creaks, and your skin is sticky with sweat, dust, and bruises. If exhaustion had a smell, it would be whatever is currently radiating off your tunic. The bathhouse looms ahead, steam rising faintly from its arched doorway. Inside, the air is heavy and damp, scented with a mix of heated water, oil, and the unmistakable tang of too many bodies sharing the same pool. You shuffle in with the others, feet dragging against the stone floor, and for a moment, just the sight of water feels like a miracle. The baths are communal, wide basins carved into stone fed by aqueducts that funnel in warm water. Men sink into them with sighs that sound more like groans of defeat. You lower yourself carefully, the water swallowing your battered legs. The warmth seeps into your muscles, easing the ache, though not erasing it. You lean back, eyes closing, the steam fogging your mind into a hazy lull. Mainstream fact. Roman bathhouses weren't just about hygiene, they were social hubs. Even gladiators, often treated as lowly or disposable, used them as places to recover and bond. Hot baths soothed muscles after grueling sessions, and cold plunges shocked the body awake. Oils were rubbed into the skin afterward, scraped off with bronze strigils to remove sweat and grime. Think of it as the ancient world spa day, if your spa day also included being whipped in training earlier. Around you, the chatter begins. Veterans swap stories, laughing about sparring blunders or trainers' tempers. Someone makes a joke about the man who tripped over his net earlier, and a ripple of laughter spreads through the pool. You groan, realizing they're talking about you. Fantastic. You're the evening entertainment. One man offers you a flask of watered wine. You take a sip, the sour tang hitting your tongue, and for a moment it washes the dust from your throat. Another rubs oil on his arms, glistening in the lamplight, then scrapes it away with a strigil. You attempt the same, clumsy with exhaustion, but the sensation of grime peeling off is oddly satisfying. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gladiators, despite their brutal lives, were minor celebrities. They might attract admirers, even lovers, who'd leave graffiti on walls praising their physique or skill. Imagine walking into the baths to find Marcus the Mighty, heartthrob of Rome carved into the plaster. You glance around your own surroundings, just cracks in stone, no fan club yet. Figures. Historians still argue whether these bath sessions were strictly regimented parts of training or more casual moments of reprieve. Some suggest trainers encouraged bathing to keep fighters healthy, while others argue it was simply tradition borrowed from Roman culture. Either way, the relief in your muscles right now feels less like luxury and more like survival. You sink deeper into the pool, the water lapping at your shoulders. Your eyelids droop, and you almost drift into sleep lulled by the warmth. But a splash jolts you awake. Someone cannonballed into the pool with zero regard for your near nap. You glare half-heartedly, too tired to actually be mad. The crow hasn't followed you inside, but you swear you hear it outside, cawing like it's mocking your attempt at relaxation. You mutter, "Even the birds get bath privileges?" A man beside you raises an eyebrow but says nothing. When the trainers finally signal the end, groans echo as men drag themselves out of the water. You rise reluctantly, water dripping down your body, tunic clinging damply. Oils are distributed again, rubbed and scraped off one last time. You feel marginally cleaner, a little lighter, though still thoroughly broken. The bathhouse has done its job. It's softened the pain, if only temporarily. Tomorrow the cycle begins again. For tonight at least, you've stolen a few precious minutes of calm from a day designed to break you. Steam still clings to your skin as you leave the bathhouse, but the moment you step back into the evening air, the chill sets in. Damp tunic, cooling sweat, and a breeze that smells faintly of smoke and bread from the city beyond the walls. It's enough to remind you that comfort is temporary here. The trainers bark once more, herding everyone back toward the cells. The day isn't finished until the rituals are observed. The courtyard is quieter now, shadows stretching long across the dirt. Men move slower, shoulders slumped, every step heavy. You trail with the crowd, passing racks of weapons now stacked neatly, dummies still leaning on their poles like battered scarecrows. Even the crow on the wall seems less smug, perched in silence, as if exhausted from watching your misery all day. Back inside, the evening routines unfold. Some men kneel in corners, muttering prayers to gods they hope will notice them tomorrow. Others rub oil into sore joints, massaging bruises that bloom across their arms and legs. A few gather around a small clay lamp, swapping jokes in low tones, laughter breaking through the gloom like sparks in the dark. You sit on your mat, trying to stretch out your calves without cramping. Mainstream fact: gladiators often formed their own brotherhoods, almost like guilds. They ate together, trained together, sometimes even shared burial societies. For all the brutality of their world, these small rituals of solidarity gave them strength. Tonight you see it in the way veterans slap each other's shoulders or share scraps of dried fruit smuggled from the kitchen. Camaraderie in the cracks of cruelty. A guard passes by, dragging chains along the floor, making sure no one strays. He lingers at a door, listening, then moves on. Silence falls briefly, until someone starts humming a tune. Slow, rhythmic, almost a lullaby. Men join in softly, voices blending into a low hum that fills the corridor. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over you. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gladiators carved graffiti into the walls of their cells, not just names but crude drawings of fights, animals, even symbols of victory. You run your hand along your wall, half expecting to feel scratches. Sure enough, faint lines are there, indecipherable shapes, maybe a sword, maybe just boredom etched in stone. It's comforting in a strange way, proof that others endured this place before you. Historians still argue whether these nightly rituals were encouraged by trainers or tolerated only because they kept men docile. Did the Lannister understand that brotherhood built morale, or did he just not care what you did once the gates shut? Judging by the casual patrol of guards, you suspect it's the latter. As long as no one riots, no one interferes. You gnaw on a crust of bread handed out as the final ration, chewing slowly, savouring the plainness. Hunger makes even stale crumbs taste precious. Around you others eat in silence, staring into space, lost in thought. You wonder if they are imagining their families, their freedom, or just the next day's pain. When the lamps are dimmed, the cell block grows quieter. Men lie down on straw mats, shifting and sighing, trying to find comfort where none exists. You curl onto your side, straw scratching your cheek, the faint hum of voices fading into whispers. Somewhere, a man mutters a prayer to Fortuna. Another coughs, then falls silent. The day is over, but the rituals remind you, tomorrow will come, and it will look very much like today. Darkness settles over the ludus like a heavy blanket, though inside your cell it feels more like a damp rag tossed across your face. The straw mat crunches as you shift, trying to find a position that doesn't jab sharp stems into your back. Every muscle throbs, every joint stiff. You thought the bath might have healed you, but the relief evaporated hours ago, replaced with a bone-deep ache that makes you wonder if you'll even be able to move in the morning. The noises of the night creep in. Men groan softly in their sleep, others mutter prayers, one snores loud enough to rattle the stone walls. A cough echoes from down the hall, followed by silence. You pull your tunic tighter, though it does little against the chill. The slit window offers a glimpse of moonlight, silver streaks cutting across the floor. It's almost peaceful. Almost. Your mind, however, refuses peace. It replays the day in fragments, the log digging into your shoulders, the root is burning blisters into your palms, the ox-sized man pounding his shield against yours, the humiliating stumble with the net. Each memory piles onto the next until your chest tightens. You roll onto your side, stare at the wall and remind yourself, you survived. Barely, but you did. Mainstream fact. Many gladiators lived in constant uncertainty, never knowing when they'd be called to fight for real. Some trained for months before their first match. Others were thrown into the arena after just days. Historians still argue whether this unpredictability was intentional, meant to keep men anxious and pliable, or simply the result of chaotic scheduling. Either way, tonight you lie awake, wondering if tomorrow is training again, or your final curtain call. You shift on the straw, trying not to scratch your skin raw. The mat smells faintly of mildew, mixed with the sour tang of sweat from countless men who used it before you. You grimace, then sigh, realizing you're too tired to care. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gladiators were said to carve charms or symbols into their straw bedding, tiny attempts at luck. You toy with a piece of straw, half tempted to weave it into some protective knot. Instead, you toss it aside, muttering, "Luck clearly took the day off." Your eyes drift to the ceiling, just shadows and stone. Outside, faint sounds of Rome filter in, the distant bark of a dog, the faint creak of a cart, laughter from somewhere beyond the walls. Life goes on out there, indifferent to the aches and bruises within these gates. You imagine families sitting down to dinners richer than barley mush, couples strolling under lamplight, children chasing one another through the streets. Meanwhile you lie here, sore, hungry, waiting for morning's whistle. Sleep teases you, so pulling you close, then jerking you back awake with a twitch of your leg or the itch of straw. You roll again, eyes closing, only to hear the crow outside the window caw once, as if reminding you it's still watching. You mutter, "Even you don't sleep, hun." Then finally your body gives in. Not restful sleep, but the kind born of exhaustion, heavy and dreamless. You wouldn't last a day of this life again. But the cruel truth is, tomorrow will demand it anyway. And now, as you lie there in the scratchy dark, let the story itself soften. Imagine the stone walls fading, their cold weight dissolving into mist. The ache in your muscles eases, like tension melting out of your shoulders with every breath. The straw mat beneath you, though rough and uneven, smooths into something gentler, softer, as if the earth itself is cushioning you. The noises of the ludus, the coughing, the snores, the distant whip cracks, grow quieter. They blur into a low hum, then drift away entirely, leaving only stillness. Outside, the moon shines brighter, silver light washing everything clean, turning even rough stone into calm shadows. The crow on the wall tucks its head beneath its wing, silent now, no longer mocking, just resting. Take a slow breath in and let it out just as slowly. Feel the rhythm steady like waves against the shore. Your thoughts, once circling with today's drills and punishments, begin to drift further apart. They no longer press on you. They float like leaves on a quiet stream. The gladiator's day has ended, but yours doesn't need to begin again. You don't have to run laps or carry stones. You don't need to raise shields until your arms fail. You can simply let go. Here, there is no crowd to please, no trainer shouting, no threat of tomorrow's pain. Just rest. Let the final images fade, the yard empty, the dummies still, the weapons put away, the cells silent. Only peace remains, settling over everything like a blanket. You're safe, here and now, sinking deeper into calm. And so we close the story, slow and gentle, easing into sleep. Sweet dreams.